Thank you. All right, there's a lot of unsung heroes. As simple as that. We've only touched on some. I could have gone, well, I was telling Dr. Clark, about 99% of them are in my history book. And I can write another one because there's a lot of people or relatives of yours who have done great things in Georgetown. Don't fool yourself. Don't sleep on it. All right. Professor Fordham, Damon Fordham, was born in Spartanburg, South Carolina on December the 23rd, 1964. All right. He received his master's degree in history from the College of Charleston and the Citadel, and his undergraduate degree at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. He currently teaches United States and African American history in Charleston Southern University in Charleston, South Carolina. He was a weekly columnist for the Charleston Coastal Times in 1994 to 1998, as well as the author of Voices of Black South Carolina Legends and Legacy, a very popular book. He's also the author of True Stories of Black South Carolina and Mr. Potts and Me, a semi-autographical based on his father's folk tales. He's the co-author of Born to Serve, the story of WBEMC in South Carolina in 2006. He conducted research for the book Sweetgrass Baskets and The Gullah Tradition by Joyce Coakley in 2006. For 3 years, he taught GED classes to inmates at the Charleston County Detention Center through the Trident Literacy Association, resulting in 28 inmates getting their high school equivalency diploma. Additionally, he wrote the article, The Spartanburg Sit-In, and the impact of Martin Luther King's assassination on Spartanburg in his book, South of Maine, by Beatrice Hill and Brenda Lee, and entries to Willie Lynch, John Tales, and The Hag for the Greenwood Encyclopedia. Oh my Jesus, I can go on and on and on. This man is a writer, you know I like writers, and a scholar, and a historian, and he's coming to Georgetown to tell you about his latest book, more importantly, or as importantly, about a hero that far too many of us, including me, didn't know about, Robert Anderson Sr., who's buried in Bethel grave. Dr. Clark and I was talking earlier, so many of these heroes are from Bethel. And like I said, almost every church can talk every February about Black history, but Bethel perhaps has more of the great Black achievements that come through Bethel. That's not to say they haven't come through other churches, they have. But we're so proud of that. And so please give him a warm welcome, Professor Damon Fordham. How's everybody doing? Great. Hey, now y'all should be happy to be alive. I mean, you're hearing these wonderful children tell the stories of your people right here in Georgetown. You don't see that too often. So once again, how's everybody doing? All right. That's more like it. That's more like it. Now, before I begin, let me say this. Back in 2007, a gentleman came to Burke High School in Charleston, South Carolina. And a young girl named Charity Chisholm gave the opening address for him. And after she gave this wonderful speech, she was a student body president, probably about 17 or 18 years old. This great man who came to Charleston said, "Ladies and gentlemen of Charleston, I want you to give this young lady a great hand because the children are the future and we must encourage them." And the gentleman who I just described was a gentleman who was married to the great Georgetonian Michelle Robinson, namely President Barack Hussein Obama. All right. So I say that to tell you that when you hear these children did as wonderful as they did just now, let me hear a hand of applause for these children once again. Because, ladies and gentlemen of Georgetown, you always have to remember that the children are the repositories of what we teach them. And if we teach them honor for when they do well, it adds to their self-esteem, and it gives them the character that they need to face the adversity in this world. So when we see them do well, we must be as quick to praise as we are to condemn when they do wrong. So let's keep that in mind. Now, having said all of that, I'm here to tell you a story that is seldom told about the role of a great Georgetonian in our history that's been greatly buried in the old newspapers. in the archives that the average person never sees. Now, many people, of course, know that there was a time when the state had segregation laws for many generations. And many, but very few except for those of us who are deep into the history, know that those came about in South Carolina largely due to a man from Trenton, South Carolina, up in Edgefield County, by the name of Benjamin Ryan Tillman. Benjamin Tillman, incidentally, had a lawyer who was a campaign manager by the name of William Thurman. You might have heard of his son, James Thurman, a.k.a. James Strong Thurman. That's right, our former senator himself. Now, Benjamin Tillman was involved with a Klan-type group called the Sweetwater Sable Club, who massacred African Americans in Hamburg, South Carolina in 1876, excuse me. But what a lot of people today don't know is that your great Georgetonian, Joseph Rainey, was among the great African Americans of South Carolina who served in the Congress and the House of Representatives, representing the state during this wonderful period known as Reconstruction. That wonderful time when African Americans filled the halls of the State House and the Congress. The great Robert Smalls of Beaufort, on January the 23rd, 1868, got up at the Charleston County Courthouse and he passed this law at the Reconstruction Congress saying, resolved, all children between the ages of 7 and 14 must attend public school for at least 6 months a year under penalty of noncompliance. Yes, this great ex-slave Robert Smalls was responsible for the very public school system of South Carolina. Now, while all this was going on quite well, but people like Benjamin Tillman did not want this new order to continue. Because up in Pulaski, Tennessee, there were 6 Confederate veterans who decided to form the Resistance Army against Reconstruction. They named themselves after the Greek word for serpent, which is kuklos, and the Scottish word for family, which is clan. Now, you don't need to see a rocket science to see how that story went. But the streets of South Carolina became filled with blood. Contrary to popular belief, the African Americans sometimes gave as good as they got. In November the 8th, 1876, there was a pitched battle in the streets of Charleston during Reconstruction. And right here in Georgetown, there was a group of African Americans who took to arms when they felt that a man named John Brumfield was about to be lynched. Your former mayor, Tom Rubilla, wrote a book about it, incidentally. But what I'm here, the individual who I'm here to speak of in particular, was a man who was a member of this church by the name of Robert B. Anderson Sr. Robert Anderson served as a postmaster and a school teacher, as well as the warden of the local jail here in Georgetown. But when Benjamin Tillman set up the Constitutional Convention in Columbia, from September to December of 1895, 6 black men stood up to say, we aren't having that. They were as follows. Isaiah Reed of Georgetown, of Beaufort. James Wigg, also of Beaufort. William Whipper of Charleston. Robert Smalls of Beaufort. Thomas Miller of Beaufort. And from right here in the state, right here in Georgetown, the great Robert B. Anderson. One of the first things that this great man did during that convention was on September the 20th, 1895, as the convention was going underway, he set up this, he proposed this law, which said that a resolution to establish an industrial school or college for the higher education of the Negro youth of South Carolina, be it resolved by the people in convention assembly that the legislatures shall, as soon as practicable, establish an industrial school or college for the higher education of the Negro boys and girls of the state, which shall not be in control of any denomination or sectarian society or organization, and that the legislation will provide support for the maintenance of the same. And so, therefore, that, ladies and gentlemen, because of this man from Georgetown, South Carolina, was the beginning of South Carolina State University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. Many successful people from Georgetown and elsewhere in South Carolina would have never gotten their start. Now, that was one of the few resolutions passed by African Americans that was actually passed in this convention. But he also did some other things, too. He introduced a measure to extend the compulsory age of all school children from the ages of 7 to 12, which would have substantially improved education for African Americans in South Carolina, because there were many of the country areas that did not have schools for black children at all. There were situations where if the black children were in school, the plantation owners of the sharecroppers would come and take them out of school so they could plant. They would only go to school sometimes for 2 and 3 months a year, if at all. But guess what? The aim of this convention was to establish the disfranchisement of black voters and establish segregation laws in South Carolina. So that resolution was voted down. Why? Because the real reason for a lot of these things, ladies and gentlemen, was designed to maintain a permanent class of cheap labor. And thus, the poor whites and the poor blacks would remain divided and a source of cheap labor, while the wealthy class of white people on top would sit back and get rich off of that cheap labor. And you have to understand that that's the real reason behind racism and segregation in these United States. So Robert Anderson didn't just do all of that at the convention. He got up, as a matter of fact, he got up on October the 28th, 1895, and made this great, great speech at the convention. And I will read to you some excerpts of it to show that, you know, when I often talk about African Americans during the 1890s, many people are under the illusion that we were all illiterate, ignorant, and did nothing but sit like bumps on a log when all these horrible things were happening to us. Well, this book that I'm writing on this subject right now, which I am reading you from, will show you the following thing, ladies and gentlemen. That was a lie. These are the words of Robert Anderson of Georgetown. Mr. President and gentlemen of the Constitutional Convention of South Carolina, I arise, sir, simply to say a few words in place of the ordinance unanimously reported to this convention by the Committee of Suffrage and Consideration and Adoption. We are here tonight, Mr. President of the Convention, asking on behalf of 100,000 loyal, devoted, patriotic sons, yea, and who are the common people, the mudsills and the prosperity of this historic old state, that the sacred and vested right to the electoral vote be not wrested from them in a single blow. And we only come pleading for this right in all that is fair, humane, and just. We are unwilling to be dispossessed of our common heritage, the right to the ballot, but taxation without representation, without participation, is undemocratic and un-American. Are we destined to be a race of miserable, crouching slaves in the land of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Samuel Adams, and Patrick Henry, who said in his great words, "Give us liberty or give us death"? Here is where it is said and claimed, the common law and the free institution, to give protection to the weak and hold back the encroachments of the strong, and to secure to every man the reward of his honest labor as an inheritance to the generations who are yet to come. Mr. President of the Convention, we are told that the law of injustice will roll on and on and on until it reaches its climax, and then a reaction is bound to come, which has already been verified in the nefarious and damnable registration laws, which you are trying to pop up by a scheme even more diabolical. For you see, ladies and gentlemen, it is a living truism. When you dig a pit for your brother, dig one for yourself also.
That's right.
Those were the words of the great Robert Anderson of Georgetown, South Carolina. But unfortunately, in spite of his great words, on December the 4th, 1895, the convention came to a vote for the segregation laws. And so the South Carolina representatives voted 116-7 to make segregation the law of the state. But guess what?
Not only did Robert Anderson join the other African Americans in voting against these amendments, there was a white man from Georgetown by the name of John Halston Reed, who voted along with the African Americans. And also there was T.E. Dudley from up around Chesterfield, who also voted against that. Because those two men, that one white Georgetonian understood, he said that this is such a violation of the sacred Constitution of the United States that there was no way his conscience would allow that. From right here, ladies and gentlemen, in Georgetown, South Carolina. So, ladies and gentlemen of Georgetown, South Carolina, you have much to be proud of. Having said all of that, these men laid the foundation for the civil rights battles that were to come. They may have lost that battle, but they did not completely lose the war. As we have seen of the civil rights activities of the many people who these young children have portrayed today. And this is what's so important. You know, there's so many young people out there. They grow up with minds limited by the negativity surrounding them. They often are educated only to the bitter rantings of adults who may have not accomplished much in their lives, but who have nothing to pass down but bile and rancor to their children. It is children like this who need to be exposed to the types of things that we are talking about today. They need to be vaccinated with positivity to make them immune to the coronavirus of negativity. So, having said all of that, I commend you, Georgetonians, for having a program like this. You're training up these children wise, so they will go forward and take what they have learned today. And so whenever they see discouragement, negativity, and the dark side of life, their eyes have been opened to the possibility of what is to come, and they will move forward and do better. So with that being said, thank you for inviting me here, Georgetonians, and you have a most blessed evening. All right, thank you, Professor Fordham, so much. We're almost ready.